Welcome back to part two of the case study, the strange case of strange PDF. And so if you want to, again, I'm not going to talk very long. I want you to do rather than listen. If you go to the web page, the Indigo page, you might want to start downloading. So this is just the lecture slides, but the Python examples are here. 1 and 2 are self-contained Python. You can run them if you have Python on your machine. You can run them there. Otherwise, we'll run them in Colab. Number 3 is a little bit more complicated, so I recommend you run that in Colab. But that will link up to the LHA PDF stuff, and there's a data file for you. The main parse is a Mathematica-based implementation of the PDFs. So if you like Mathematica, you can do that, but that's entirely optional. So you can take a look at that and download the appropriate things to get started. But let me just start by recapping where we were last time on part 1, because I know that was many days ago. Okay, here we go. So again, the challenge is to get the strange quark distribution. And because the strange quark, it has the same charge as the down, but it's a lot smaller, it's hard to do. So, back in the 90s with neutrino deep inelastic scattering, we looked for dimuon pairs. That was a great signature. And that seemed to suggest that the strange C was about half the up and down C, which is what you expect because it's a heavier quark. But then when you do the nuclear corrections, this is the ratio, in this case, the upper left of iron to an isoscalar result. We had the split personality problem, which seemed to suggest that the charge current W exchange and the neutral current photon exchange meant to different nuclear corrections. So that was an uncertainty we had to deal with. And then Atlas came along, and we didn't have to do this on heavy targets anymore. We could do this on proton. And there we found the surprising result that it suggested that basically the strange was twice as much as the down C, which is surprising, counterintuitive. And so here's the result from Atlas, the 2017 update. And we actually ran that on xFitter, and here are the results from xFitter. So we had, we fixed the value to half, and then we opened it up and let it be free. And the fixed value had a much higher chi-squared than the free value. And if we look what came out of that, here we fix it to a half, which is what you would naively expect. And in this little case, we got 110%. So that's where we left off. Now, the xFitter will dump out LHA PDF files you can read in a variety of formats. And rather than going inside the virtual box, there's a Python implementation in there, but we can look at this with a variety of tools. And so we're mainly going to be using Python for this. So here are the 3 examples, 1, 2, 3. And this one, for reference, I've dumped out the PDF. So that's the third one's a little bit more complicated. So, if you want to make sure you're getting the right output, I put the PDF there. 1 and 2 are completely self-contained. And so in number 1, what I've done is I've just sort of dumped the set of PDFs at a fixed X and Q. So you've got the full PDFs at a fixed Q value. You can make plots and do integrals and things like that. So if you want to just ease into it very lightly, that's a good thing to do. Then the second one, what I did was I took the output of that RS fix and RS free. So you have 2 PDFs that you can work with. And here what I'm showing is for Q of 10 GeV, these are the 2 results. The fixed value is the lower strange, and the free value is the upper strange. Okay, and then you can do integrals and check and things like that. And so there it goes. And so here was the output of xFitter. Again, this is down around the initial scale. You see quite a bit larger. Here's the ratio of the 2, and here's the Z data and the W data that's driving this difference. Those are the xFitter outputs. And then the third notebook has a full installation of the LHA PDF. And so this is a set of C and C++ routines that interpolate the tables. If you run these and install these, then you can have access to all the PDFs. It also includes Pion PDFs and also fragmentation functions, but it's the whole library. And so this bit of code up here will take care of that, and it'll actually build it inside Colab. So you can build it inside Colab. You can also build it on your own machine as you like, and then you have access to the whole range of things. In the standalone, I just took a slice at a fixed queue just so you can play with them, but this gives you access to the whole thing, and it's a little bit more complicated. So a couple things you might do. Again, this is free form, but if you have access to the whole thing, what you might want to do is, if you look at the momentum fraction as a function of energy, that's sort of an interesting value. And for example, if you look at here, it's not labeled, but what we find is this is gluon, up quark, down quark, and then you've got strange charm bottom, in the anti-quarks. But as you go up to high energy, you sort of get almost, well, you get an SU2 symmetry, and eventually, if you go high enough, you get an SU3 symmetry between the light quarks and this is the top and bottom down here. They'll catch up after a while. But, if you want to, that's an interesting plot. Another good thing to check is if you compute the momentum fraction of all the flavors, they should add up to 100%. So anytime I bring in a set of PDFs, one of the first things I will do is I'll do a sort of a sanity check. I'll check the momentum sum rule, make sure they add up to 100%, because that'll tip me off as to whether or not I've made an error. Another thing that's sort of interesting is here, I've got a variety of PDFs here for different nuclei, and I'm comparing it to the isoscalars. So this is F2 for the A, for nuclei A versus the isoscalar combination, and you see the characteristic nuclear correction. So you've got the shadowing region, the anti-shadowing region, then the EMC region, and the high X Fermi region. So again, that's another one you might want to play with. And here's just an enlargement of the two previous ones. Optional, but if you prefer Mathematica, so there's a link here to this paper and the materials. The HepForge does not work anymore, so I put a temporary link in the Indigo. But this is basically a Mathematica package that does interpolation for you. So if you prefer Mathematica, then you have it right in there. Here's the link to the temporary things. You can download these and fire them up, and they'll work right out of the box. So in the Mathematica package, actually, let me just back up. What we do, these grids are stored. Essentially, it's a grid. You need to store a bunch of X points, a bunch of Y points, and then you have 13 flavors, 6 quarks, 6 antiquarks, and the gluon. Okay, so it's just basically a big matrix that you're interpolating from. And in the Mathematica, rather than trying to link to something, we implemented the interpolation and the parsing of that. If anyone is feeling industrious, not during the school, but afterwards, it might be sort of interesting to do something similar to Python, so you have access to the full set of PDFs without having to link to a separate C++. And if you're interested in that, I can give you some pointers. A few details you have to worry about. Tim Hobbs talked about this before. When you go across flavor thresholds, you have to transition. For example, here, when you cross the charm threshold, here you have up, down, strange. Now you have to turn the charm quark PDF on, and then the bottom, and then the top. And there are actually variations of this. You can actually work in 3 flavors up to high scales and make adjustments. But one rather interesting feature is when you go across flavor thresholds, it turns out there's a discontinuity. At NLO, things are continuous, not differentiable, but continuous. But at NNLO, it turns out that there's a discontinuity. So here I'm plotting on the left-hand side the gluon going across the bottom threshold. And here I have the bottom quark PDF turning on. Okay, and what we see is the gluon actually has this positive discontinuity. Okay, And so the bottom quark actually starts slightly negative. And so if you're saying, gee, I'm feeling uncomfortable about negative probabilities, as Tim said this morning, you have to remember these are not physical things. So when you calculate a cross section, you had better get a positive cross section. That's definite. But the way you change things between different flavors, you can change contributions around and get slightly negative things like this, and everything's okay. And in fact, that has to be the case because you have to satisfy the sum rule. If one of these quarks jumps up, something else has to jump down, so you have 100% momentum fraction. Otherwise, you'd violate the sum rule. But because of that, what we do internally, we parameterize grids. So when you pull up the any particular PDF and you have the interpolation grid, it's actually a set of subgrids for each flavor because you don't want to try to interpolate across that. But anyway, that's a subtlety that you'll see at higher orders. So that's where we're going. And let me go ahead and if you've got the first one pulled up, let me go ahead and pull and just let's see. I've got that. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. And so here, all I'm doing is, I mean, you can pull this, if you pull this up in Colab, it works quite nicely. But here, I'm just pulling in some default things so I can do some plots. And here I've actually, if I open this up, I've just stored the PDFs. Okay, I just ran the Python, dumped that out. But you've got a real PDF of a particular flavor. Okay, and then you can go ahead and you can plot that. You can try some integrals just to show you how it's done. I'm using a Simpson integral with fixed points, and you can cross-check the momentum fraction. So, if you want to start off really easy, that's a good way to go. If you want something a little bit more challenging, I'll point you to this. I'll point you to this one. And so here, I'll point you to this one. And here I've stored the PDFs, but these are the results from the xFitter we did last week. And so you have two PDFs in there. And I have input 0 and 1. And you can check some of those. I've done the plots standalone of the two, and then I plot just the strange. But some things you might want to try, look back in example 1 and do the integral for that. And then also I've plotted here, just this is the strange quark versus X. Let me show the scale. But one thing you might want to do is someone asked, is this ratio between the strange and the down X dependent? So something you can do even within this is go ahead and take a ratio between this and the down and see what the X dependence looks like. Because again, what we were seeing is that the fixed target data around X of 0.1 seems to like a value where the strained quark is 50% of the down C. But when you go down to the LHC, more like 10 to the minus 2, there it seems to like something actually in excess of 1. So you could satisfy both of those if you had an X-dependent ratio. So go ahead and plot that and see how that works out, okay? And again, some of you are very proficient in Python, so I'm sure these are trivial, but if you want to warm up, that's fine. And then the third one is a little bit more interesting. And in this case, well, actually, do you want to do this? Do you want to run off your computer or I have it, let's see, I don't have the whole thing in Colab. I do have the whole thing in standalone. Let me find that if you, yeah.
Well, you have to
Sorry?
You could have
Okay, well, actually, this is, I think I have the whole thing. I have the whole thing here.
It should be green.
Yeah, so I think let me make sure. I think I have the whole thing here. So if you want to just
Save that.
Yeah.
I just saved that.
All right, yeah, I mean, go ahead and start trying this. We'll walk around, but Peter will walk you through this one. Because this is, I don't know who created this notebook. If you find out, let me know. But it's a very nice example. So
Yeah, so in this example, we actually calculate a physical cross-section using the PDFs. So what we're calculating is this formula here. So we have 3 types of integrals over 2 types of PDFs in here. And what we're calculating is the collision of protoproton going into a pi0 and something else and the rest of it. This is a very simple example that you can do within one of these simple notebooks. But what you have to do is calculate these integrals here. And this becomes very complicated. But with the LHA PDF tool, actually this is fairly manageable. So you can do it within 15 minutes, depending on how fast you scroll through this. Okay, so the idea in the end is that you come up with this plot here. This plot is the differential cross-section that we've calculated here. And in red, I've overlaid here the experimental data measured by Phoenix at RIC, for example. And here we can see the blue line. This is our theory prediction for these data points. And as you can see, we're doing a very simple calculation. You will see that in the notebook, but it checks out quite well, actually. So what we can do with these tools is calculate these horrifyingly looking equations, relatively simple within a simple notebook, and come up with real physical results relatively quickly. So what this notebook does is it goes through the steps of explaining how everything works. So the first thing you do is installing the LHA PDF library. So this one, if you execute this cell here, it installs it for a Google Colab. So if you want to do it on your own laptop, you need to do a little bit of modifications of these. But
I've commented that out just because I have pre-installed it. So.
Yeah. So the one that you download looks a little different, so it's not commented out here. But once you have that, we do some sort of setups where we just show, once again, different PDFs. So this time we load some actual values. So we load the so-called CTEX6L1 data sets. So these are, you can look this up. This is a real publication of a PDF set extracted from real experimental data. And this you can easily download from the LHA PDF website. This is done automatically with this first cell here, so you don't have to worry about it. But what we then do is we define some functions and we define an analytic version of the strong coupling constant. And then we calculate the so-called platonic cross-section. So this is the H term in the formula above, given here in the 3 Mandelstam variables. And what we do is we define it first, then we calculate it. This is the all expressions for the integral at NLO. And then we use what is called a so-called Vegas integration. So did anybody ever use Vegas for anything? Okay, a few of you did. Vegas is a more sophisticated way of doing integrations by the so-called Monte Carlo technique. So instead of evaluating the integrals and overlay them with some sort of grid, for example, the Simpson rule would overlay the integral with some sort of grid. The Vegas integration is based on Monte Carlo. So instead of doing these grids, it samples the integrand at random points and calculates the integral from that. And this turns out to be very, very efficient if you go to a large number of dimensions. So integrals which go over a lot of dimensions. And in this case, we need to integrate over 3 different variables. So in this case, one could do it or with these simpler Simpson rules or something else. But already here, it is useful to do the Vegas integration. And Vegas is a C++ implementation that does it very, very efficiently. But you will see that coming up with these numbers, so this is now the Vegas integration of the actual integrand, it takes a few seconds to come up with these numbers here. And once you have that, all you need to do is download the experimental data set. We link the experimental data set to the Indico page, so you can download it there, load it in, and then do the plotting against you. So if anyone thinks this was too easy and they could do it easily, what you can do, and maybe can do within this afternoon, is instead of just calculating the central value here, calculating the uncertainty coming from the PDF. we haven't done anything in this notebook which tells you how to do that, but you can Google the LHA PDF library and go to the documentation and find out for yourselves how you would do that. And if anybody comes up with those, this would be a nice task if you want to spend an hour or something on this problem here. Okay, with that, I'm done. Have fun.
So go to, we're here to help as needed, but again, hopefully that's enough of a range so you can do something simple, or if you want to dig into it, hopefully there's enough to chew on. But we're here to help, so yeah.